Hello, and welcome to this sixth video in our series about the North Node in the signs. We are the astrologers of Pandora Astrology. I'm Jamie Kale Miller. I'm in Berkeley, California.
I'm Julia Mijas in Pioneer, California.
And today we're going to tell you what it's like when you have the North Node in practical, hardworking Virgo in your natal chart, which means, of course, that you will also have the South Node in mystical and dreamy Pisces. The nodes speak of your destiny. They speak to your karmic past and your future, the direction that you're leaning into so that you can evolve, and also the baggage from your past lives that you need to let go of. So your South Node sign will tell us about stuff that may feel really familiar and comfortable and easy for you from past lives. But if you indulge it too much, it's not good for you. And you're better off leaning into your North Node, which is probably going to feel unfamiliar, uncomfortable, like not easy. But when you do it and you do it well, you evolve yourself more powerfully and you get that feeling of really being on the path in life. Julia, you want to add any thoughts to these ideas about the nodes?
Yes. When looking at the South Node, every sign and placement in astrology has a higher and a lower manifestation. So when we look at the South Node sign, we tend to use the lower manifestation to understand it. Like, for example, there are many high things to Pisces, but in order to really understand the nodal narrative, it's the lower manifestations of Pisces we have to get away from. And then looking at the North Node in Virgo, it's conversely the higher manifestations of Virgo, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I do think that it can be fine to draw on the wisdom, the positive wisdom that comes from your South Node. You just need to not let it suck you back into those old past behaviors that are so comfortable, because then if you do, you're going to stagnate in your life. So what does this mean for this particular nodal axis? Well, the South Node in Pisces suggests a karmic past as an artist living in a world of imagination. You might even say that the South Node in Pisces describes past lives lived a little bit like a fish surrounded by water, always supported by your environment, and where you can afford to shape and mold yourself to your environment, and maybe you even became really good at that. So this nodal axis has something to do with differentiation, like separating yourself out from other people and learning about distinctions and differences, rather than living in that sort of state of mergedness all the time, if you will. It's also possible you had past life experiences lived in religious orders like monasteries or temples, where your service was spiritual. You meditated, you prayed for world peace, you communed with spirit, with God in some form, but you did live in that rarefied atmosphere and not in the actual world. So the North Node in Virgo suggests that you should get into the real world and like make yourself useful in physical, practical, tangible ways. Julia, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I mean, essentially for this nodal sort of direction that we have from Pisces to Virgo, its strong linchpin to me is definitely embracing pragmatism, definitely embracing some sense of order and routine, perhaps too.
Yeah, definitely touching down to earth in tangible world ways, instead of living, in a dream world. That can really, suck you backwards, if you will. So when I think about the North Node in Virgo as an antidote to the South Node in Pisces, I think about that it's good to take on a trade or a craft, or to just approach life in a craftsman-like sort of way. Start to really care about the details. Work hard to get it right. Aim for perfection, but avoid perfectionism, because that's the shadow side of the Virgo North Node. You can end up, aiming for perfection, but becoming just very sort of critical and rigid. And that's not really the point. You might say that this is the path of leaving behind chaos and embracing order. And that really what it's about is serving in the physical world, being of use, and you know, doing things that are tangible, you know, serving in ways that are tangible and actual, rather than just sort of imaginary and spiritual. So Julia, we have a couple of charts to look at. Most notably, the first one we have is a very famous artist of the past. And so here we have the chart of Mozart. He had the South Node in Pisces right here in the 6th house, North Node in Virgo. And apparently the rating on this chart is AA, which means that the birth data is very solid. That's really nice to hear. South Node is conjunct Uranus. He just kind of came in with a lot of artistic talent. He was an artist who was able to pursue his art because of having wealthy and prestigious patrons, which is a very Piscean way to go about it, including the Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II. This particular nodal axis suggests that his purpose was to learn to bring his art into the physical world where others could experience it in a concrete and physical way. He produced music in ways that were meticulous, detailed, and perfect. He had a way of creating a complete piece of music with all of the instrumental parts finished in great detail in just one draft, and not making copies of his work. That's a little terrifying to me. It could be said that Mozart drew in his South Node in Pisces to excess, and lived on the nervous energy of that Uranus conjunct the South Node. I think you mentioned that to me, Julia. You pointed out that Uranus conjunct the South Node, and that he was an acknowledged genius even in his own time, but he faced many health problems and would have been better off embracing his Virgo North Node more by having better habits and better health routines than he did. If he had, he might have lived longer than his short 35 years. What are your thoughts, Julia?
Yeah, you know, the story of Mozart, you know, he was reputed as, I mean, of course, he was a prodigy, and he went around Europe and as a child played in royal courts. But he was also known to be kind of a weirdo, kind of an outsider with that Uranus on the South Node, and also just kind of chaotic, and kind of, and he was known for being very silly and a little bit inappropriate too. And Pisces can definitely have a very weird sense of humor, I think, that sign. But, you know, through his career, he actually established himself with sort of greater social respect when I think people saw the level of work that he put out and his, you know, his ability, which, you know, Virgo being a work sign, you know, that he sort of produced things which, you know, were considered very sort of socially acceptable, and really kind of built a name for himself in a much more, yeah, in a much more recognized way.
Yes. And the other example that we have for you is Emily Dickinson, South Node in Pisces here in the 4th house, signifying family, North Node in Virgo in the 10th house, signifying career and fame. Like Mozart, if Dickinson's birth time is correct, then her North Node is actually conjunct the midheaven, showing a strong sense of life purpose with the attendant pressure to pursue her destiny path. Dickinson was a hardworking and meticulous writer dedicated to poetry as a career. North Node is with Saturn, so that makes sense, which she pursued with perfectionism, but she avoided actual publication. It might have been better if she had published more of a fulfillment of her Saturnized North Node, certainly. Like Mozart, Dickinson spent perhaps too much time relying on her South Node. She was drawn into the dark side of her imagination, fearful and superstitious about death, and preferred isolation, which is very Piscean, and there in her 4th house, right? Like Mozart, she was an artist who relied on patronage. Her South Node in Pisces shows the roots of her poetic abilities. They were already developed in past lives, and also many past lives spent in marriages, it's conjunct Juno, surrounded by family. And in this lifetime, she was supported financially by her family, which allowed her to write. It's an irony that being a woman meant she had the leisure to write, but that getting published would be difficult, and she avoided it. Her fame only came posthumously.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts about Emily Dickinson's
Yeah,
nodal?
well, she had a very religious upbringing and was quite spiritual herself. I mean, I think she knew the Bible in and out, and that really speaks to that South Node in Pisces. And then I think she began writing regularly when she worked with a tutor at the age of 18 and started being exposed to different types of literature, and then started to develop a very regular habit, which is Virgo, with writing. So I think that, yeah, it kind of moved her from just a solely spiritual orientation to more of developing a craft, which is definitely Virgo.
Yes, approaching it in that crafty kind of a way. Well, hope you enjoyed this video about the North Node in Virgo and the South Node in Pisces. And if this is your nodal axis and you want to explore it further in a reading, you can find us online at pandoraastrology.com. And if you check out the readings tab, you can get that reading and find out so much more. And until next time, we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.
Bye-bye.